multiracial fam. So, I literally just kept listening because I was like, maybe something interesting will come about or whatever. So, I did actually hear something interesting that I kind of wanted to touch on. So, let's just go ahead and get into it.
With a wide nose, right? No, that's what you hang on. I'm asking her a question. Do you think your husband was indoctrinated to be attracted to you? Because she's saying that's my case and most black men case that we're indoctrinated to love exotic. So I'm going to ask you. So by Danny's definition, your husband was indoctrinated to want
Let me talk. I'm going to be honest because we know that colorism is an issue in our community, and most black men are going to be attracted to lighter women because it is an indoctrination. I've never had a problem in, getting.
Okay. So, I find it funny that when honestly almost any group of men are attracted to us, it's an indoctrination, but we're specifically talking about black men here, right? So if it's an indoctrination for black men to be attracted to light-skinned women, which I'm not saying that it's not, I just think that's pretty interesting. And I wonder if because to me the coin always flips. It always flips. That is fairness. That is truly fairness. So my question is, for my people, and I want you guys to comment down below and let me know, is does the coin flip the other way? If it's an indoctrination that dark-skinned men are attracted to light-skinned women, right? Let's keep an open mind. Let's play the devil's advocate, I guess, and say that could be true, right? Then is it fair to say that light-skinned men being attracted to dark-skinned women is an indoctrination? If not, tell me why. If so, tell me why. I would really like to know because that's the question that came to my head that I need a little help answering. So you guys, please comment down below. Help me out with this. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys next time.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. I'm going to be speaking quickly because there's plenty to say in order to do justice to somebody's valid question. And yet, I don't want this to be too long. I want to make this easy for you all to listen to and learn from. Shout out to Multiracial Movement. That is her YouTube name. Look, she had a valid question, and you may have seen the video at the beginning of this if I got my editing right. And if not, then I have to put a link into the description to her video. But she asked a question, and it is valid. If more abundantly melanated men are indoctrinated to like lighter-skinned women, then are lighter-skinned men indoctrinated to like dark-skinned women? Multiracial movement comes from another sphere, the Goldensphere. In the Manosphere, I must be militant, and I must be about winning a gender war that I was born too late to do anything to prevent, and would not have been able to do anything to prevent had I been born before it. In the Goldensphere, the idea is already to prevent such, and I'm on board with that, and so therefore I can be a different person there, and I can treat most of the women with a more even hand. And that's what I plan to do in order to be fair. And yesterday, I only called out those who have shown me evidence that they have so one-sided of an attitude that they want to drag or they don't care if they drag a gender war into the golden sphere, because their attitude is, I take, you give. And understand this, Muhammad ibn Abdullah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even before there was permission to fight back, told the Qurayshi Meccans that were fighting him, he said, I am he who smiles when I kill. And I have come to consume your harvest without cultivation and to appropriate your wealth, or something of that nature. He pretty much was telling them, I came to take and not give to you. Now, this was something that a prophet was saying to the people who insisted on worshiping idols and even fighting those who listened to him when he said there ain't but one God and no idol's going to accurately depict him. But understand what he was pretty much saying is, if you don't come to my side and you insist on fighting me about this, then I'm going to conquer you. And when I conquer, to the victor go the spoils, I will take and I will not give, but that will be your fault because of the stance you chose. What I'm hearing is the same talk from some people towards men without us ever having declared war on them or really being willing to fight them in the first place. I'll come back to that. In multiracial movement sphere, the golden sphere, I get to treat honest questions by these ladies as honest questions. Now, my answer would sound harsh if she and I did not know each other, but I want those of you listening to understand that she and I know that neither one means any harm to the other. Just like I had to explain to her in her live stream earlier today that Hybrid Vigor and I didn't mean any harm. He was giving the title of a book without putting it in quotations. He wasn't saying, hey, yo, black man, I can prove you wrong. No, we straight. We've never had any beef or argument. Matter of fact, shout out to Hybrid Vigor too. If he, I don't think he's put forth any content, but if he did, I'd start to listen. I'd be willing to. Anyway, I will say this. When I talk about this gender war in the wider black community, and this is why I go in with such militancy, don't take my word for it. Crimson Q already said this herself in a video that was entitled, This is Why... she said this is why black women are difficult in relationships. And if you look at that video, the first 6.5 minutes of that are when she breaks it down so well that you would voluntarily finish the other 9 minutes and 16 seconds remaining. So I knew this before, but she came and she articulated it. And so that's why I sit up and I say that this is combat when it comes to most of the gynocrats and matriarchs in general, but with the Goldensphere being started to leave behind the gender conflict, which is actually gender war, I go in with a different outlook. I called out those who showed me what they showed. So in the Manosphere, I'm all for men winning because we deserve to win. We didn't start the gender war. End of story. I'm not entertaining discussion, and we did. And I'm not going to go too deep into it this time for the sake of time. I'm here to answer another question, but it is tangentially related to the answer to the question the multiracial movement deserves. And I've already gone, let's see here, 4 minutes and almost 5. So let me get to it. Ma'am, indoctrination alone cannot do this for men. Women have to choose a man in order for that man to be able to keep a type, develop a type past whatever his initial visual type was when he begins puberty. So I'm saying this with no malice, but just to answer the question, because your question had no malice, but it may seem to some like I'm talking from a standpoint of bitterness when I'm merely going to talk from the standpoint of an explanation. See, I do have to remind you and other well-meaning women at times of men's position to help you best understand the answer to your question and other things you may discuss. Because you and other women of the sphere who don't mean us any harm will still forget men's perspective from time to time, but that's forgetfulness. I don't attribute this to malice. It is a normal crack, hairline crack in a foundation that normally shows up. But I have to keep bringing this up because the warhawks in the grass about whom I warned you would love to take a crowbar and chip away at these hairline cracks so that they can sort of wedge the foundation asunder and thereby the whole sphere, and then by extension whatever offline community may result for golden folks, if it could even result at all offline after the efforts of these warhawks. They may want to bring in this war, they may simply not care if they bring it in, causing it to spill over. What they care about is they take and we give, and that's the end of it. Or they take mostly, we give mostly, and there's very little in exchange. Now, we men are, as I said before, we men don't start our lives off choosing women. So we have to build our value to women and over time. So when we start off and we're younger and we have the most testosterone, we're actually being negatively valued by women and girls, especially sexually, because of the money that we don't have. So our learning years are quite nasty in that regard, to be honest. And this is why I tell men to learn chastity, but not celibacy. Never take a vow of celibacy. Just learn chastity by fasting until you are married. And then I turn around and I tell unmarried men to fast, like I just said, but then I tell wives to prioritize the husband's libido and her own libido over her materialism and hypergamy. So I don't tell men to fast for the same reasons that women might support. Women may simply not want a man without much in the way of material things to come and approach them. And my answer to that is, okay, don't approach them because you would validate them and they have ego boost. In the wider society, they're at war with you, even amongst the Wyatts. So my reasons are different. I also tell fasting men to not render aid, assistance, and protection to random ladies that they don't know. One, because sex is that important. And that's not something for which either gender owes the other one an apology. And I don't want men being told you be laborers, you be workhorses, and your reward is going to be celibacy and the friend zone. I mean, I'm not saying that men need to go and knock down a bunch of women. No, what I'm saying is that if we're not careful, that's exactly what will wind up happening, because we've seen the proof and it's already happened. But this does relate to the answer to your question. When it comes to LS men dating and going for DS women, it's actually due to a completely different type of indoctrination. And that indoctrination is beyond the definition we have in English. It's not even indoctrination. It's conditioning, it's training, results in experience. Because results and experience are necessary for a man to be conditioned and trained by the women that choose him, that are with him. If he's always by himself, no one chooses him, he gets conditioned and trained through results and experience that he's going to be by himself. He learns nothing of what women want, above or below the belt, because all they want is for him to stay over there. So there are only three types of indoctrination itself that exist in the black population. Number one, black women, mixed or admixed, are taught to value the darker skinned black man. Number two, black men, mixed or admixed, are taught to value black women of various shades in general. Number three, light-skinned men are taught even more extremely than dark-skinned men to take what we can get, especially if we want to prove our manhood and masculinity. No one is taught to prefer or to prefer even to equally value the light-skinned man. But he could be an exception if he's within the ambiguity threshold for his location, and there are some other things that might intimidate other men about him. Then, okay, he's going to be held up as the exception for the rest of us. See, he can get it. How come you can't? It's not his look. It's how you are. Because people love to say that to us. I mean, it's an open secret. We're out of style, but nobody wants to admit that that's why it is that we won't be dating as many sisters as abundantly melanated brothers would have a few decades ago. I say would have, because now we know it's across the board. But at least there's a chance for some guys that are within the ambiguity threshold, and they will be used to discredit the rest of us. So as I said, granted, this difficulty now applies to most black men who don't fit negative stereotypes. But as I and Carl have noticed, the light-skinned, ambiguous-looking men were the first to be locked out. Even in the 80s, the darker-skinned men were not locked out to the same extent and as severely as we were in 1989 and since then. Now, they may have been teased, and that did happen. Some of them were locked out by some women. Some of them were told no by some women, but they were still paired up because they were the majority. It didn't make sense for women to say, I absolutely will never be with anybody that's browner than a paper bag. I mean, it wouldn't have made sense. So they were teased and still paired up. They heard yes, they heard no. The jokes were that we would steal their girlfriends, but these were jokes. And after the summer of 1989, when Christopher Williams got arrested for domestic violence, this is before he played Kareem Akbar in New Jack City. At that point, we were seen as too feminine to even be with anyone to be stolen from us, if you can really steal someone in a romantic context anyway. So this happened in my hometown according to this timeline. So the timing and severity will be different in other towns. I understand that. But in the end, the abundantly melanated men and the lighter skinned women getting together was not only due to telling the men, you need to be with light skinned women, it was due to the women being told, you need you a real black man. Nobody was told, you need you a light skinned man. That was not something that was being said after 1989. So we got imprinted and trained by experience and conditioned by experience and results by whoever didn't mind us and being seen with us. Maybe it was the Latina for one guy. Maybe it was the Southeast Asian for the other. Maybe it was the Wyatts for the other guy. But it was always on an individual basis when we were younger, because remember, women of any origin never specified that I want a black man, but he's got to be light-skinned too. That was not a combination any woman ever said. So some just just went on an individual basis, and that's how we found who we would find, if we found anyone. Because see, let's say a woman wanted specifically a Latino and we're just of a similar phenotype, but not Latino and not Spanish speaking, then we're disqualified. If she wanted specifically an Arab and we are similar in phenotype, but we don't speak Arabic, then we're disqualified. So we dealt with that over there too, but it was not so much phenotype, it was cultural. Indoctrination could not have been responsible alone for LS men coupling up with DS women. And to be honest with you, that doesn't happen as often as what we might think. What happens is that when you see an LS man with a sister, normally she is DS. That's what happens. But a lot of times, what I see is a lot of us alone, or over here, I see a lot of us with non-sisters, period. No black admixture that is known. It was about who could be attractive and still choose us. And within the black population, as I've said, that was a DS sister. You take an attractive LS sister, who they gonna choose? So we can't be indoctrinated to like them and then grow up being imprinted by them and accustomed to them. And it's not something we can do. It's not an option. This is how it worked for us because this is how it works for young men in general. So as I've said, the indoctrination of dark-skinned men to prefer light-skinned sisters only worked because light-skinned sisters were indoctrinated to choose and prefer them. Had that not been the case, not only would LS women have eventually lost DS men as an option, but this is already how black women in general, admixed or unmixed, began to lose options in LS men in later years. First, we were overlooked. Now we're becoming slowly not an option. It's just training and conditioning, no bitterness. And it's a similar mechanism amongst some other men. To give an example, this is not only with shade that this works. You have some men that are older brothers, and they've learned to not even want skinny sisters anymore. Because when they were younger, sisters that liked their own shapes and bodies would not have looked at these dudes. And now we know that that's the case for most guys. But back then, they probably would have thought, oh, it's just me. They single me out to value me at the bottom and value me the least. Whatever the case was, they couldn't pull a woman that liked her shape and liked her own body. Well, what happens is that later on, Big Shirley will give them a chance. And then these men get conditioned after enough Big Shirleys and so few or no thin and medium weight sisters. So all this really comes down to is that women start off with the power and the control. And Just Beeb and I agreed on this point. But understanding of this is important to understand two things. One, the answer to your question, and then also why it is that there are militant men like me that will say, okay, look, everything you want, you must give something for. And why I will sit up and say, if you own the power and the control in the sexual market, you must own the accountability for how your choices will shape the men and the society. If you cannot own both, leave the choosing to the men. But that's another title for another recording for another day. In the meantime, I hope that this recording helps with understanding the role that indoctrination played in why you would see LS men with DS women before you would see them with LS women. And I'm sorry I could not make this any shorter. Thank you for listening patiently, to you and to your audience members and to my own audience members. But now everybody listening knows exactly why I continuously say, Assalamu alaikum, black heart, black mind, blackout, and black, including MLS, non-select heterosexual male power because the gender warriors don't like it, and black, and MLS, patriarchy until extinction or judgment day.